Hello and welcome to another Macros for Editors video. We've got a different way of running Fredit this time, and it comes from a request that I had from a Fredit user, and what they wanted to be able to do was to have a list of different Fredit lists and then select one of those and run it, so some sort of menuing system. I'd already got a macro called run Fredit list, and I use that as a basis. So if I tell you what that does, then you'll see where we go from there. So run Fredit list will load up one particular specific Fredit list, then it will run Fredit, and then it will close that list file. So you open the document you want to work on and run this macro, and that will run one particular Fredit list, but only that one. And you have to specify at the beginning of the macro what that where that document is in your computer, so you've got some sort of address there and then the file name at the end to specify what that individual list is. So from there I said, right, okay, well, let's do a menuing system, and I created Fredit list menu. So within the idea of that is that you have a folder, a directory with a number of lists in it. We've got 5 lists there, and those lists are going to appear on a menu when we run the macro. So if we run the macro, I'll do that from a keystroke, we've got this list here. It's not very clear, so let's just do a print screen and cancel that, and if I paste that in here you can see it more clearly. So those are your 5 lists that are in that folder, and each one has been given a letter in order to call it up rather than typing the name or whatever. It calls up C for the cleanup list, and F for the final do macros, H for highlighting, and there are 2 files there with the same initial letter. So what the macro does is to call one of them H and the other one HH. I've done it. I thought that was the most you'd need. If you ask it for, if you have 3 files with the same initial letter, it will tell you not to do that. So I'm sure you can choose the suitable names that will give individual letters. So that's the menu that we get. And again, as I say, we have to specify where those lists are. So we've got at the beginning of the macro we have this line which specifies where those lists appear. And just as a reminder, this sort of thing, we use this on a number of macros where you have to actually put in an address into the beginning of the macro. But just to remind you how to do that, if we open that particular folder, there it is. If you click in this top window here, then what you get is the actual address. So I can use Control-C to copy that and then cancel that, and then that address has to go in between the quotation marks. So if I close those 2 and do a paste, then I get that address pasted in there. So I mean, you'd be doing that in the actual macro, which is here in Visual Basic, so you'd paste it in there. Okay, so that's how you set up the macro. So let's just try and use it. So a bit of text here, zoom it out a bit. So you say, right, that's the text I want to work on, run the macro, and let's select one of the lists that we want to run. Let's run the highlight all ETs. So if I click H and return, then it runs that list, which is basically a list to highlight all the E's and highlight all the T's. Silly, but it illustrates the point. So if I run the macro again, I can then select the HH, return or enter. So that highlights all these in the document. And it's worth just remembering that Fredit can do more than just find and replace, because if we look at the final do macros file, what we've got there is these lines which look like find and replaces, but they're not. It's a way of getting Fredit to actually run individual macros. So this Fredit list, the job of this list is to run 5 different macros, one after the other, on the text that you're working on. So it's the sort of thing you might do either at the beginning of an editing a file or at the end of it. So you can run that that file. Well, I think that's about it. So we can run up our menu and select which file, which list file we want to use to work on this document. Okay, thanks for watching.